I watched the game against Nebraska,
Mm-hmm.
and the Penn State game left a lot to be desired from the whole team. I think they're still figuring a lot of things out with Dickinson, but I was saying on the last podcast, you can win games if you keep the team to, what was it, 58 points, I think, Penn State. But you're not going to win the games you want if you're only scoring 62. I mean, what did you see the biggest difference between the Penn State game and the Nebraska game where they got into the 80s?
Well, I mean, a lot of it's style of play. I think probably the opponents, right? Penn State plays a very different way than Nebraska. Nebraska's going to look to. I wouldn't say defense is a priority for Nebraska.
Yeah.
It's there's going to take some wild ass shots. Hope they go in and look to.
Suck it, yeah.
Yeah, man, look to get into a game and hope to make shots, and that's kind of the way that they play. This Penn State team is. They can score points. They've got they got guards who can put the ball in the hoop, but they can play a kind of grinding style and things like that. The thing that's in terms of this kind of early season, especially these last few weeks, that's really jumping out to me in terms of what Michigan's doing is it's an interesting scenario where you suddenly find yourself in season learning what your best option is and then having to kind of rearrange priorities. Like, when you think of how Michigan played in recent years with everything revolving around Xavier Simpson, well, okay, now you have a true post center who needs touches on the blocks and is just, needs to be a volume shooter and scorer, and you have to get him the ball. You have to play through a center. This is it's like 1985.
It's crazy.
And you don't not just going to snap your fingers and suddenly everyone knows how to play that way. So I feel like they've realized, holy shit, Dickinson's a monster. You have to play this way. But now all these other guys who've known a certain way of doing things have to recalibrate. And you can see, I think Franz is a good example of trying to figure out how to play as kind of an auxiliary part to what is something very different when Xavier was just drilling him in the chest with perfect passes all the time last year, and then he just went and got buckets, right?
Yeah.
Mike Smith isn't Xavier Simpson, and Hunter Dickinson isn't John Teskey. So, I don't know coming into this year, I don't know how much it was like priority. We're just tossing it down low all game and getting shots. That was not the conversation, right? It was the wings. And now you have to figure out and adjust as you go. So there's going to be some hiccups. I'm sure they're going to have just, a bad game here and there where the offense is just going to stagnate and defenses are going to defend them in different ways, or Hunter Dickinson's going to get in early foul trouble. And now they're going to have to figure out how to do it a different way. But Dickinson, for as good as he is, I feel like has also reshuffled the deck in a way that it's going to take a minute and you're going to see very different showings every night.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny to watch. Dickinson, I didn't even take a shot until well into the first half because they were double teaming him and how teams are going to adjust to that. And I was just watching the guys in the perimeter, just kind of looking at Dickinson, seeing the double team. They're like, well, do I move? Where do I go? And I think Eli was the first one to really do, start to cut. I think that it's figured out as the game went on. But I mean, there was one time where Franz threw it in and he kind of cut real half-assed because didn't know, and then Livers kind of followed around to the strong side and got a shot out of it, but they didn't even try very hard. They didn't quite know. It's just move. You'll figure it out. You guys are smart enough. Just keep it going. But I want to talk to you about Franz because I have just been dying for him to shoot the ball. And I read your, sort of heavy quotes profile that we talked about you can't do anymore. And it was talking about, should we be concerned about Franz? And you said even before the Nebraska game, no, I'm not going to be too concerned right now. And then he had an interesting quote in there that said, I have to be more aggressive, but that doesn't mean taking more shots. And I was like, yeah, it does, dude. It definitely does. You just take more shots and that'll open up the other parts that you want to do. It'll open up the team playing aspect that you want to be a part of. But I'm like, dude, you're 6'10". You got to just shoot it. It does not matter. And then go from there. You already started out a little bit, I don't know if it was timid or just figuring things out. I mean, I wouldn't call him timid, but slowly getting into things. And it's only been 6 games, but dude, just shoot it.
I wondered if that quote was almost Franz telling himself that,
Yeah.
like, because he probably has so many people from the staff to his brother to whoever being like, dude, just let it happen. Like the game, when you find the ball in your hands, just go make a play. Him coming out and saying I have to shoot more will I don't know. That's could potentially lead to taking bad shots, right? You don't just want to shoot just for the sake of having more field goal attempts. Like you want to shoot because you're getting yourself into position to get good looks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of felt like I had the same reaction you did, where what do you have the game before that? He had like 5 shot attempts, and you're like, dude, you're probably the best player on the team. Like that just doesn't, Dickerson might be the most dominant player on the team, but you're the best, probably the best basketball player on the team. But like, I don't know how black and white that line was. You know what I mean? That quote. I think some of it, he's measured. He's not going to put more pressure on himself than needs to be. It's always going to be, I'm going to play my game, and some games it's going to be a lot of shots. Some games it isn't. I did find it interesting that Isaiah Livers basically called it. Do you see that? He said you're gonna see who he is.
Yeah, like Juwan came out and they watched film, and I imagine because Beeline would do the same thing with guys where Tim or Trey wouldn't take a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And, have like a rough game, maybe only take like 6-7 shots when he needed to take 10, 11, 12. And I can only imagine that Juwan stopped the film and was like, dude, shoot this. Just shoot this one. Shoot this one. There's probably countless times. I mean, he only shot 12 threes, I think, in the first 5 games. And I was watching couple games, like, just put it up. No one's going to block you. Who cares? Just shoot it.
Right.
And I bet they had that conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he knows. I feel like he does have a pretty solid understanding of how good he is.
Yeah. He seems so.
And I don't know.
Bro. He seems very super, like where I think he really did mean it. Like or when Juwan was talking about him figuring everything out, where like you said, and you wrote it in the piece where it was going from Xavier to this and like really figuring it out. And it takes. I mean, there's no non-conference schedule. Like it was nothing. There was no figuring out in the preseason. Right. It does take a while to figure this stuff out. I mean, I've had seasons where, we had, I think it was my junior year, we started out like 0-6 or something in the Big Ten, and then we ended up making the tournament. And it's like, you can figure it out in the last 10 games. Like it can take a long time. But I remember I just watched a couple plays where he came off a screen, a guy went under, came off a ball screen, a guy went under and he didn't shoot it. And that pissed me off. And then he came back literally like 3 plays later and then shot it when the guy went under and he made it. Then there was another possession. He drove down the lane. He missed a tough shot, kind of a little runner, a little outside the lane over outstretched arms, missed it, came back, I think like 2 plays later, did the exact same thing and made that one. So I was like, okay, he's figuring it out, figuring out his spots, where he needs to go. Like he seems maybe too smart. Like sometimes he's overthinking his talent a lot of times.
Yeah. And how many times has there been where the ball would maybe get swung over to him and he would go on that, instinctually to put the ball on the deck and drive down, make like a baseline drive or whatever, where last year, right, John Teskey might be standing at the foul line. There's nobody under the basket. All you got to do is beat your man. Well, now Hunter Dickinson's standing under the basket, which means that the guy who's guarding Hunter Dickinson's also standing under the basket, right? And it's just that space is so much different. You need to, right? I mean, you could probably explain it way better than I could, like understand how your offense looks and like where those lanes are and where the opportunities are and getting that feel. Like how long over the course of a season do you feel like it takes for that to develop? It's not the NBA where it's 82 games, right? You have a much more finite amount of time. Like how long does that take?
It can take a bit. I mean, our offenses kind of got once Darius Morris got to helm the point guard spot, it really became a ball screen offense. And then with Trey, it was the exact same things. And we ran our set offense and we had our designated spaces and our designated times to drive. And, Tim can drive off the wing when this happens. And, he was given leeway kind of within a box. Like, Beeline would literally tape off courts into thirds. And it was like, this is central, this is right, this is left. you want to start the offense in central this possession. So there was literally like broken down into spaces. And I think when I watched Nebraska game, like Howard had them 4 out, 1 in, and kind of made sure that spacing was going, but then still had, it's not an intricate offense. It is basically where, okay, we need to figure out how to just get these guys into spots and then let their talent take over. Like for us with Beeline, it was always, you got to be in the spot and then you got to have a short window to let your talent take over. There's a lot of times, maybe rightfully so, but there was a lot of times I wanted to do some stuff and I was like, I can't do it right now because I'm not allowed to do it in this spot and this time. And like, that stuff happens. Trey, definitely, the guys with talent, they get more leeway, and definitely, the 13 team had those things, but ours is a little more set. So I think it's a little more of adjustment when you have the talent that you have, the Dickinsons, you have the Livers and the Wagners, and then you guys, the supplemental guys. I think it will take more time for a team like this compared to a team like I had under Beeline.